I want to welcome you all here today, and I want to say that I'm going to pull this a little closer to me. Okay. Um, I'm a little nervous, and this is new for me because I'm never really nervous. I give talks all over the country and all over the world, but I've never really given a talk for my peers. And Detroit has been a very tough city for us, but we were determined. So I just want to thank you, and I'm going to ask you to bear with me. I have no fancy slides. I have nothing. I bring to you basically just me today. And I just want to talk to you. I want to talk to you about a little bit about our journey. And so forgive me if I do read a little bit, but for the most part, we're just going to have a conversation. So thank you for being here. So this year, the Heidelberg Project celebrates 30 years, 30 plus years of artistic excellence. As executive director and now president of this extraordinary outdoor art environment for 25 years, I've had the pleasure and pain of steering this organization through 6 mayoral administrations, 2 bulldozing efforts by the city of Detroit, and 12 fires throughout 2013 and 2014. Yet, in spite of all of our adversity, what we have achieved surpasses our obstacles by leaps and bounds, and personally, I've never been more proud. What I want to do this morning is to richly share with each of you who I am and how this work has impacted and shaped who I am as an individual. And in order to do this, I'm going to focus on 4 key points or 4 key topics that have been the guiding principles for our work with the Heidelberg Project. And those 4 principles are these: the authentic sustainability factor, the dynamics of negative and positive, the power of intention, and the pattern of threes. So now I have to digress and tell you a little bit about myself. So when I was a child, I questioned everything. I always wanted to understand why. And my mother once told me that I was her why child, and that often got me into trouble. And as I grew into womanhood, I kept asking why. And inevitably, asking why is how I ended up working with Tyree and the Heidelberg Project. So as many of you know, in June of 1993, while I was on my way back to work, procrastinating, I took a wrong turn down Heidelberg Street. And I tried to turn down Benson, but a car was on my tail and literally forced me to turn down Heidelberg Street. Now, why I was in that neighborhood in the first place was because there was a feeling of nostalgia when I was driving, procrastinating, and it was because that was the neighborhood that my father came to when he first migrated here from the South, looking for a job in the automobile industry. So I had this feeling when I was in the neighborhood. But then when that car was on my tail and forced me to turn down Heidelberg Street, of course, unbeknownst to me, Tyree Guyton was sitting on the curb. He was talking to a judge. I'll never forget it. It was a red Volvo. And I asked him the question, what in the H-E double hockey sticks is all of this? That is the question that I literally asked Tyree 25 years ago. And he, in his militant attitude, green army pants kind of way, said, why don't you get out and check it out? And that was where my story began. And then 1 year later, I gave up 14 years. Corporate America, I was working at Michigan National Bank at that time, which is now, who knows. But I had profit sharing, and I was doing everything that family and friends thought I should be doing as a young African American woman. And so, of course, when I told my family that I was going to leave my career and go and take on this quirky art project, listen, let me tell you, my mother has just started to come around 3 years ago, okay? I mean, it was just, my whole life was turned upside down. Now listen, most of you in here know that I'm married to Tyree Guyton, but I want to say this. It took us 8 years, so it's not like there was love at first sight, by no means. We were hot and cold. We were east side, west side. He was as artist who had this wild vision. I was this kind of conservative type of woman who thought art belonged in museums. You know, even in my education, I still felt that art belonged in a place that was not for me. So I am the first partaker of this work known as the Heidelberg Project. So I had to tell you my story. So now I want to go back and just kind of dig into some of the things that we talked about. So as a woman working in this particular field, there were and are barriers, and as an African American woman, those barriers are even tripled. However, barriers would soon become my best friend and my triumphant stepping stones. Easy to say, but much more difficult to practice. But practice is what I did. The number one question that Tyree and I often get asked is how we do it. How did we do it? How did we survive demolitions? How did we survive all of these fires? People wanted to know where our strength comes from. How were we able to keep going in the face of such adversity, such obstacles and challenges? I always hoped that one day I could answer that question and share our journey in a way that it might really reach down and touch the soul of people, and especially in these particular times we're living in. It's no secret that the current state of our country is shaking the entire world. And irrespective as to whether you're a Trump fan, because many are, whether they admit it or not, or you detest the man, the world as we have known it is changing. Business as usual, the status quo, the same old song is no more, and rightfully so. I say the world is as it should be. The way in which things are changing has less to do with one man in a particular position, but much more to do with how we think and what we do as individual human beings. I am suggesting to you this morning that most of us don't really know who we are or what we're capable of. And let me give you an example of what I mean. When we meet someone for the first time, we give our name and immediately go into our spiel about who we are and what we do. We may talk about our work, our kids, our education, our possessions, and the conversation usually grows from there. But the real truth is that everything we talk about is always outside of ourselves and never inside. Then to top it off, most people are only listening to half of what you say. You know that's true. And of course, our race and our culture and our class play a big part in the equation. What this suggests is that we are, for the most part, unconscious. People want to be close to you because of what you do or who you know, or they want to steer clear of you for the same reasons. But if we think about it, it's never really because of who you are, what you really stand for, or being human, or a human that is striving to be. And if you ever dare to go deeper, people will shy away. Why? Because it's unfamiliar, it's uncomfortable. It takes us to a place where we have no control. Our ego has to take a back seat, and then we are exposed for who we really are, scared and frightened creatures trying to make sense of this thing we call life. Welcome to the world of the Heidelberg Project. I have had butterflies in my stomach since I met Tyree 25 years ago, and I have to tell you, to ride that tide is not really such a bad thing. It woke up my consciousness. It made me truly aware. And here are a few natural carnal examples for us to consider. The thing that tends to wake up our consciousness mostly, or jolt us, is death, right? Divorce or infidelity, or gaining or losing a huge amount of money. Those are three things that you can bet will wake up your consciousness. In other words, anything that severely alters the status quo. In a way, Trump is doing us all a favor. And we see this unfolding every day. His shenanigans on the highest level of government is a major wake-up call, forcing us to be better versions of ourselves or bringing out the true beast that always lived within. In my mind, the goal is to find out where we stand. So when I think about changes, that I don't agree with, or obstacles, challenges, I challenge myself to shift my consciousness to turn them into tools for growth. What is this teaching me? What can I glean from this experience? And trust me when I say it takes practice, and it is painful, but it's rewarding. And it's not rewarding in the moment, but somewhere down the line when you look back and say, I made it through that. And here are a few metaphors to illustrate my point. Now remember, we're talking about art metaphysics. It is the dynamics of negative and positive, the pro and the con, the good and the bad, the yin or the yang, the list goes on, and we're all familiar. Have we ever considered the process of cleaning clothes in a washer machine is called agitate? Do we ever think that in order to get lights, we need a negative and a positive charge? Think about what causes a pair of shoes to shine. It's a beating and a buffing process, or it's a this way and a that way. How about in anatomy? We have a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system, or the veins and the arteries, one pumping pure blood and the other impure blood. All of creation points to a dynamic push-pull. From these natural examples, we can see that agitation, negativity, and buffing, much like the psychological effects of problems, challenges, and obstacles, can become tools for growth depending on how you think about them. The true key is in how you think about them. So when we're asked how we get through the tough times, we take what might be considered a negative situation and shift our consciousness. We add in a bit of courage and we keep moving. Someone once said, when you're going through hell, keep going. Truly, tomorrow is another day and somehow is always better. This then becomes the true and authentic sustainability factor. Allowing yourself to be vulnerable, allowing yourself space to grow, allowing yourself to be pulled in unfamiliar directions, forgiving yourself for being fallible, and instead learning how to simply be. Now let's talk about intention. This is a dynamic word that is defined as follows: a thing intended, an aim or a plan. We've had one since the early 90s with the Heidelberg Project. But what were we trying to do ultimately with the Heidelberg Project? What was our aim? What was our goal? It was to use art and creativity to awaken the human spirit. So the goal became to weigh the intention. Was it making a difference? Was it planting good seeds in the world? Was it challenging the status quo? Was it opening up the imagination? Was it making folks feel something? Because it was once said to me that hurt feelings can bring about good things. So bad can be good, and good can be bad. That's a quote from Tyree Guyton. Most importantly, was our intention worth fighting for? What we were forced to do with our work in the Heidelberg Project was to sink or swim. Tyree and I chose to swim, and in order to do that, we had to expand our consciousness. We had to ask ourselves, if our intention is to do something good, something great, then we had to stretch our imagination. We had to expand. We had to embrace both the negative and the positive, such as life already dictates, which in essence just means that we had to be aware of what we were doing, what we were experiencing, how we react, and what that reaction is teaching us. We had to fight for something greater than our egos, our hurt feelings, and ourselves. Over and over and over again, we had to examine our intention, and we had to fight to learn from our experiences so we could move to the next level. We were stretching, and we were using more than the standard fraction of our brains to do so. But were the tools that we use, what were the tools that we used to explore the principles of authentic sustainability, the dynamics of negative and positive, and the power of intention? This brings me to the fourth principle, and this is the dynamics of the pattern of threes. It's in everything in our world. right down to the basic building block of matter. A proton, a neutron, an electron, or a cell, which is a nucleus, a nucleolus, and a cell body. Land, air, water, plant, water, fruition, morning, noon, night, breakfast, lunch, dinner, forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. 3 parts to your finger, 3 parts to your arm, 3 parts to your leg, 3 parts to your torso, 3 main layers of your skin. If you peel an orange, you have meat, you have the peel, and you have seed. It would appear that there is a great pattern in operation. What does this pattern mean, and what does it truly point to or teach us? To go into depth is another lecture. But I will say that there is a true rhythm to life, and this has yet to be explored. If we only explore those things that we know, how do we ever get to the next dimension of what we don't know? If we only focus on how it's typically done, how do we ever get to what's yet undone? If we let what's without dictate every facet of our life, how can we ever know what's within? How can we ever know who we really are and what we're really capable of? The question that I find myself asking is, what am I after? What do I want in this life? Is it more things, more stuff, more status, more attention? What do things do for me? Really? How do things help me, see me, grow me, love me, and preserve me? Do people telling me I'm great when deep down I feel less? Does that really help me? So I have to ask myself, what am I really after? This work with the Heidelberg Project is, as I have said in the booklet, it's saying, seeing, and feeling all things. And after many years, I have answered the question of what I'm really after. And it just has to be about using my experiences to lift humanity, because we damn sure need it. Thank you. So, I know that was probably a little unusual, but what you got today is who I am. Those of you who have known me over the years, and I have people in here that I have known for 30 years, and if you're in this audience or 25, raise your hands. You see, we don't just hang around each other because we're cute. There's something very special in the relationship and the growth that we have experienced and the love that I look and as I look around and I look at your faces. And I'm very thankful for that, because in the end, this is what I'm saying. This is really what it's about. It's how we move to the next level as humanity in a race. So I did want to take a few minutes to answer any questions if you have any. If you appreciate anything that I said, that's great. I appreciate that. But also to really have a talk back, to really have a conversation that makes us think and that stretches us. So any questions? Yes, Onita. Well, I'm just saying that that delves into deeper into the principles of metaphysics, which I, did not go in that deep into. But I've been studying metaphysics for 33 years. It is the foundation of my life. I didn't hear you. Oh, yes, DD, Doctor of Divinity. That's what that means. That's a little title behind my name. Any other questions? Any thoughts? Well, first of all, would you introduce yourself? Because this young lady came all the way from Grand Rapids. She's a new curator at, listen at me, I'm introducing you, at the, what's it called? Yes, and thank you for being here. Art Prize was an site lab. That gentleman approached Tyree and invited him to participate in what they felt was a more authentic installation. And Tyree, did you want to mention about what we did at Art Prize?
Why don't you go ahead? I'm sitting here listening to you.
It was amazing because what we literally did was we really picked up parts of the Heidelberg project. That's what we did. We literally picked up parts of the Heidelberg project, which is a process of us dismantling, and we took it to Site Lab in an old abandoned high school, and we had the third floor. Talk about those principles of threes, right, Tyree? And literally, artwork that was displayed on Heidelberg Street was at Art Prize. I think that what Tyree said in his notes was that he had to get lost in order to be found. Yes. Yes. So Heidelberg always challenging us to go beyond, step outside of comfort zones, and to feel uncomfortable. I've gotten used to it though, and I kind of got a love affair with feeling uncomfortable now, truthfully. I really mean that. Any other questions? Yes, Terry.
I'm Terry Campbell. You talked about moving past disappointment, putting the ego in the backseat, learning from it, and moving on through. That ain't easy. So just tell us a little bit more about how you did that.
Yes, did everybody hear her? She said the question is moving past your ego, getting past disappointment. That's not easy, and that's true. How do you do that? Let me tell you, Terry, I have about 42 journals, and every page is full. So a real good lesson towards moving past things is to purge things. So I write, and when I'm in pain, which was often, I would write. Every time the phone would ring after 12 midnight, I would have heart palpitations after those fires. You know what I mean? And I had to write. And that was what would purge me, and I would feel pain. There were many teardrops in those books, but the next day, you would find that you were okay, and you could move to the next. There's no packaged antidote. It's just going through the process and doing the work. You have to be committed to doing it. Questions? My sister is here. Many of you have never met her, Sherry Whitfield. Say hello. My sister and I are very close. She is my dear, dear, dear friend. I love her very much. Lisa. It's very simple. It's just a complete dot. We are 360 degrees, and we're going around now to our next iteration of what Heidelberg can be. I like to think those first 30 years, that was the battleground, right? That was the creative age. That was the getting us ready. We had to fight. Sure we did. We had to fight for what we were doing. Now, and I can say this with the city of Detroit, even though they're not in the room yet, now we have won. And we have convinced our city that the Heidelberg Project deserves a place in Detroit, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Yeah. We don't know what it's going to look like, but you can see if you go to Heidelberg Street, and Onita can take the van and drive some of you down there, you can see it's already changing. We have our Numbers House, which we're going to learn more about in the sessions today, all getting ready for new development. And it's so exciting because we're investing in that community. And we're showing that it has value and worth. I got 5 more minutes, I guess. I'm doing good on time, huh? Any other questions? Yes, Leslie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Now you bring a mic. Okay. I found your presentation very touching. And I'm curious to hear your opinion on the metamorphosis of Heidelberg in parallel with the city of Detroit. Because in some of your opening comments, it has been challenging. It has not always been warm and welcoming. Can you talk about that evolution in the Heidelberg project in the environment and the context of the city of Detroit?
Well, I would just say to you, first of all, that the Heidelberg Project has been a natural evolution. It is a natural grassroots process. I think that, don't shoot me, but I gotta be honest, I think that sometimes we think we're planning and we know what we're doing. And I think that a lot of times we see what happens to those plans. I think that the greatest thing about the Heidelberg Project is that it has grown as the city has grown. And its place, it deserves a place here in the city of Detroit more than any of these fancy new buildings, shiny new buildings, and all of these other shiny new things that are just still things. Tyree always says you can't heal the land until you heal the minds of the community. That's a really important metaphor. So the key is, in my mind, is that as we're bringing the city up, we've got to bring the people up. We've got to do that. And how do you do that when people are so hopeless? Let me tell you a real quick story, because this goes to the heart of art being a medicine. A gentleman that Tyree has been working with in the community for over 10 years is a known heroin addict. But this gentleman took a shower at the Capuchin. He unbraided his hair and picked it out, and he walked all the way to MoCAD to see Tyree's show. Let me tell you what that is. That is new information that in the short term is changing attitudes and in the long term is changing behavior. This gentleman felt that he was special enough, even being a heroin addict, to go and stand in MoCAD and see Tyree Guyton's show. That's the kind of work we're doing. I don't know how to quantify it all the time. I certainly don't know how to put it in grant reports as I should, but I know it's the work we're doing, and it's dynamic. I know I overtalked your question, but I just wanted to share that with you to let you know that's 32 years of this kind of stuff. Brenda Numa, from the community, raise your hand. You're here. Thank you for being here. Anybody else? Okay, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to start our sessions, and I'll turn it back over to Orlando. Thank you so much.
Come on, can we give a big round of applause for Dr. Janine Whitfield?